things that I think we all admired about our late and brilliant monarch, Her Majesty the Queen, was the fact that she seemed unflappable, didn't she? It didn't matter what happened. You know, wherever she was, she just carried on. And I would say that's something that His Majesty the King has done, you know. I remember being on a sort of event maybe about a year and a bit ago now where people were doing the "You're Not My King" thing, you know, and he just kindly just wandered through, and I thought that's the way to do it. Do you remember, I think somebody threw a egg at him or something, and you do come away thinking, yeah, you know, just ignore all the negatives and keep pushing on. Now, what's fascinating when you look back, as I often say in history, is that, well, you look at it and think, wow, how come nobody bothered to mention this? And when you think about it, you're dealing with the world's most famous woman at the time, Queen Elizabeth, right? And you need her to attend your event because this is the event that makes a lot of money for that particular charity. But you see, in all of the rush and push and all the excitement of what we now know to be the brilliant Royal Variety Performance, well, things were a little bit different in 1960. Let me explain. Morning, chums. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much, as ever, for your time today. You know, when I say about the Queen, though, it's true. I mean, I remember watching the terrible situation way back, I think, in the 80s when I was at school. And do you remember there was somebody fired a gun, and I think it was at the troop in the colour, and she just never flinched, you know. And I remember thinking, I hope she's all right, because, you know, you just don't realise when you're younger, that's what they do. They just carry on and literally show the world they're not going to be affected by it. But sometimes things are out of your control. You see, with the Royal Variety Performance, it's always about the planning, the big names that you can get, the superstars that will come over to entertain the royals. And in times gone by, this really was a huge event. If you got the offer, well, as Mickey Rooney famously told me, you know, nobody was going to turn that down. You didn't mind paying your own airfare all the way from America just to say you'd performed in front of British royalty. This could reopen doors. It was chat show fodder, and magazines wanted to interview you. What did they say when you met them on the lineup? That sort of stuff. And when you look at it now, and you look at the old show reels, you can see that the Queen literally met everybody. You know, I remember meeting Yul Brynner and him talking about what it was like to meet the Queen. And I'm thinking, this is Yul Brynner, the King and I. You know what I mean? You just don't get over those sort of things, do you? Now, what was interesting in 1960 at the Victoria Palace Theatre, of which, of course, Her Majesty the Queen used to sort of call that their local theatre jokingly, was the Royal Variety Performance. And that particular year, it was being produced by the esteemed band leader, man from Bolton, a northerner himself, Mr. Jack Hilton. And Jack really was a big impresario. Although he'd had a mega successful career with his band throughout the 30s and 40s, he'd gone into producing and created many big stars, including Dame Shirley Bassey, who he spotted and gave a very big break to. Dame Shirley will confirm this, amongst many other names at the time, including the brilliant Morecambe and Wise. But by this point, he's now sort of the king of television and doing quite well. Not the king, but, you know, producing those sort of shows. But the problem that Jack Hilton had was the fact that in amongst of all the excitement of putting this wonderful show together, well, he'd forgotten to mention to the Queen, to the royal family, that this would be the very first year that the Royal Variety Performance was going to be televised live, right? Nerve-wracking in itself, as you can imagine, not just for Jack, but for all the performers. Now, what was fascinating was at the 11th hour, suddenly, you know, they realised, was anybody warned the Queen that there's going to be the cameras when she arrives, the moment she steps out of the car, it's going to be live across the nation. And suddenly somebody realised that, you know, maybe we need to put a bit of a nod into her. So Jack had to go over and explain. And the only question the Queen said was, are they colour cameras or will there be news, black and white cameras? And again, he wasn't quite sure. And the reason why she wanted to ask that question was, well, what should one wear? You know, did it need to be a vibrant outfit or indeed? So eventually all of this was placated. Now, one of the things what was interesting about that was actually the Queen needn't have worried about the live BBC cameras recording that historical event, because it was in fact this man, yes, Sammy Davis Jr, that managed to take every single thing away, but this time though, not through his talent. A bit of a mishap. Let me explain. Sammy Davis Jr was less fortunate with his tie and tails. Arguably assisted by his manager, he could do nothing about the dimensions of his suit, which was several sizes too big. His top hat presented the greatest challenge, and the star of the night found himself on stage with a headband padded with tissues in a lame attempt to keep the hat in place. All was well until it came to the national anthem, when hats were removed. Out flew the tissues and they sailed directly into the stalls. If that wasn't bad enough though, when the hats were put back on at the end, Sammy Davis Jr, to his chagrin, felt his hat slip down right over his face as the audience, who had restrained themselves commendably until then, slowly dissolved into helpless and uncontrollable laughter. And that really was the story of exactly how, well, the 1960 Royal Variety performance came to be, well, televised, but more importantly, not so much of a worry for the late and brilliant monarch, but actually a memorable night for all the wrong reasons, for the super talented superstar that was Sammy Davis Jr. As ever, thank you so much for joining me on that little canter through history, and I hope you have enjoyed it. It's always lovely to share these stories, and if you can, please like and share and comment respectfully yourselves. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.